Barnyard Language. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families.
In case your kids haven't already learned all the swears from being in the barn, it might be a good idea to put on some headphones or turn down the volume. While many of our guests are professionals, they aren't your professionals. If you need personalized advice, consult your people. Welcome to Barnyard Language yet again. It is springish into summertime, and so that means that all the things are happening on all the farms. So, Katie, what's happening on your farm?
Hay is done for the first round. We always do it on Memorial Day, so it was Memorial Day, so we did hay. Made a lot of big ground bales. Boy child went out and helped Daddy quite a bit. You know, somebody has to supervise.
Yes,
I think it was a pretty rough first haying. There were some parts runs and a fair amount of swearing, and
not for the boy child, maybe.
Yes, his language is sometimes a little more developed than one might prefer, but we're working on it. You know, we're working pretty firmly on these are words we can say at home and in a tractor and not other places. And these are words that we can say other places.
Yep.
And it's mostly that he sounds so much like the person he heard it from when he repeats it that it becomes very clear where he picked it up. I will say the other morning he was laying in bed with me and Daddy and the cat, and he rolled over, and bear in mind he's 5, and he rolled over and he goes, "This is lovely." I was like, oh, he repeated something that I didn't get upset about. Isn't that nice? He's just so sweet. Other than that, we had an incident with the bull getting in with some heifers last year, and they were all looted, and we still had, I think we're up to 9 calves this spring, which is 9 calves that we weren't supposed to have, but they're all very healthy and happy and springy looking, so that's good. Other than that, I've posted some to the social medias, but the daycare that the kids go to hatched out eggs as part of an Egg in the Classroom project through Farm Bureau. And so we now have 7 chicks in our chicken coop. The girl child thought they were going to live in her bedroom. Not, even I am not progressive enough for that one. Largely because chickens are very dirty animals and can cause a lot of lung problems.
Progressive isn't the word I wouldn't say.
Well,
there are some farm animals are farm animals.
I was trying not to,
reason, right? They need
I
their
know
own
some
housing.
folks who have house chickens, but it tends to be one, and it tends to be a pretty involved pet situation. Chickens are very dusty and can cause a lot of lung problems. So, and also, I don't want to listen to chicks distress calling all night. That does not sound relaxing to me. So what's been happening at your place, Arlene?
Well, some of the same things. Yeah, hay has been happening. The corn and the soybeans are planted, so that is good. And they got a bit of rain on them, so that is also wonderful. Lovely, as your boy child would say. I managed to injure myself at the busiest time of year, so that was not ideal. Like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, was back to playing ball hockey, and was reminded that I am not 20 or a actual hockey player. I'm in my 40s, and I'm a recreational sports fan, and so I tried to keep up with a much younger woman than myself, and it didn't turn out so well. So I sprained my ankle, so it's looking very black and blue and swollen. So I actually got a few days out of the barn, which wasn't really the plan. But thankfully, my teenager and some of our staff took over some of my milking sessions for me. So I was back in the barn this week. It's still a bit sore, but I'm wrapping it up tight and wearing supportive footwear, and we're going to power through. So, yeah, that was a few days of relaxing that I hadn't really planned on last week. But I did some cross-stitching and watched some Netflix and did some paperwork and that kind of stuff. And in other news, my husband and I are both leading 4 H clubs at the moment. So he's leading a dairy club, and we're hosting their judging night this week for the county. So that'll be several different classes: cows, cookies. What else have we got coming? Sheep, I think, from somewhere, some crops. Anyway, all the kids will do some judging, and I'm leading a cookie club. So I've been doing lots of test baking, which actually works out quite well for my family. So we had our first meeting the other day, and it went really well. We've got a good group of kids, so we're going to do a bunch of different cookie baking, and we have one meeting that we've got planned to go to the grocery store. We've got a tour of the bakery there and to do some kind of work about how things are priced, how things are labeled, what's on ingredient labels, all that kind of stuff. So we have that kind of stuff has been running through my mind a lot lately, just trying to organize my thoughts into something that is hopefully somewhat fun and also somewhat educational. And I'm realizing that being a teacher, not that I didn't already know this, is a lot of work, because this is just like a very small sliver of what I'm sure they have to think about every day. So as always, thank you to teachers. Katie, your school is done for the year
They
already at
wrapped
this
up
point?
on Friday, and the boy child had a preschool graduation, which is in that list of things that I used to think was just ridiculous bullshit, that they do stuff like that. And the older I've gotten,
Yeah. But did he have a little hat, and was it adorable?
it was the cutest damn thing I've ever seen in my life. And I've realized that really a lot of these kids have worked really hard in preschool. You know, I mean, it's hard work when you're 4. And a lot of the kids in our school don't speak English as a first language, which I'm sure makes it that much harder. And you know what? We all need more things to celebrate in life. So if
Why
if
not have a
little
party,
kids want to
right?
get dressed up, and I'll tell you, especially the Latin families in town take dressing up very, very seriously, which I love. We are talking big, big dresses, lots of fluffy, fluffy little dresses. Um, the kids sang some
Oh,
songs.
that's
They got
adorable.
diplomas. We should all just find more things to celebrate in life. We should eat more cookies and find more things to celebrate because life is hard enough.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like our end of year is really far off, but it's only a month away, and I don't have a preschool graduation. I have a high school
wow.
graduation, which is adorable for other reasons, because I remember a lot of these kids when they were just little kindergartners. And that's one of the things about being in a small town, right? Is definitely some people move away, but there's going to be a lot of kids walk across that stage who my daughter went to kindergarten with. So it's pretty exciting, and prom is coming up this weekend, so the excitement level is at an all-time high. So we have hair appointments, and we have to wash and detail the tractor and pick up flowers, and um, what else do we have to do? There are nails. I think there's some self tanner going on. So yeah, there's lots of things to get ready for. I only have one daughter, so I'm guessing that this might be the fanciest of the proms that I am semi involved in. But I made some floral arrangements for the tractor, and I think they look pretty good. So we will. I'll post some pictures once the big reveal is ready. The only problem is we need to use the tractor for spraying this week first, so the spraying needs to get done before Friday, so that we can get it ready for prom on Saturday. Because I don't want to have to stay up all night Friday cleaning the tractor.
This is the most farm family problem I have ever heard. That you need the tractor for prom, so the spraying has
Yeah.
to get done.
Should we bring on our guest for the week?
I suppose we should.
Today, we're excited to be talking to Adrienne Ivey, who's joining us from her ranch in Saskatchewan. So, Adrienne, we start each of our interviews with the same question. And so, for farmers and ranchers, this can cover crops and livestock, but it also covers families, businesses, and all kinds of other stuff. So, we ask, what are you growing?
Well, that's a bit of a changing topic on our farm right now. We are predominantly a beef cattle operation with a little bit of grain farming as well. So in Saskatchewan, that means the normal oats, canola, peas, wheat, barley, that kind of thing. But we have been changing that a little bit due to economics and also due to we're getting old and we're sick of working so hard. So we are downsizing the beef cattle side and upsizing the grain side. So we're really fortunate that our land can go either way. But so we're, converting it from long-term forages back over to annual grain farming. But then a larger part of my day to day are the kids that I'm growing as well. We have two teenagers, Noelle, who is almost 17, and Cole, who just turned 15. And like you would think somebody who spends so much time mothering wouldn't have to think about those numbers so hard in my head before I spit them out. But yeah, that never seems to change. So that's what keeps us busy on the farm these days.
So when you're talking about making a switch in numbers, what are you kind of currently at, and what is your goal in terms of whether that's in acres or numbers of head of cattle or whatever you're willing to talk about? I know not everyone wants to talk about the actual numbers, but if people had an idea of what we're talking about.
I'm an open book. I'll talk about anything and everything, probably things that nobody wants to hear about. So that's no problem. So at our highest, we were calving out 1,400 mama cows. And that has slowly whittled down. That was a little bit too high of a number for our land base, which all grain and everything included is about 10,000 acres. And so we've whittled that down to, we kind of hovered around 1,000 for quite a few years. And now our plan is to get under 500 that we're going to calve. But along with that, we not only have the cow-calf side, we keep all of our calves and we run them as grasser yearlings the next year, retain ownership, finish them, own them right through to processing for fat cattle. So we still will probably continue to do all of the parts of it like that, but just reduce our numbers significantly to under 500. And along this way, as we've been slowly whittling down the cattle numbers, we were grain farming, as low as 1,000 acres, and we'll probably upsize that to I'm guessing, we'll see where all the numbers land out, but probably around 6,000 acres that we'll be grain farming here in the near future. That's the loose plan, but as I'm sure both of you know, plans never quite go exactly as you have planned them out to be. So it will be interesting to see where we actually land and how close that is to the plan, because I'm sure it will never be exactly what I planned.
And what breed of cattle do you have?
So they're commercial cattle, so, mongrels, but predominantly Angus based. We have a little bit of Hereford in the genetics as well, just to give a nice little cross, the odd little bit of Simmental in there too, but mostly Angus. We've been running red Angus bulls for a really long time and had originally started with a predominantly black Angus cow herd. So it's a mix of red and black Angus mostly.
I feel like that's something that a lot of certainly non-cattle folks and maybe non-livestock folks in general don't get, is that for commercial purposes, it doesn't matter to have, pedigreed animals generally. If you're not selling them for breeding, it does not matter, and as long as they're doing well for you, it really, the color doesn't matter, the breed doesn't matter.
It's such a difference from the dairy industry, right? That is so genetics focused and particular about their genetics and registrations, and I don't even understand, but all the different levels of the cows and classification, that's the word that I'm looking for. Whereas for us, we're really focused on just pure production of the individual cow, and if she does real well for us, then no matter what color she is, she'll keep raising babies. And it's really, for us, it comes down to two things. The first is feed conversion. So we need a mama cow that doesn't need to eat a lot herself, but yet raises a good calf. But then we even take that back farther, and it's not so much about even the cattle genetics, because even though we're considered a livestock farm, for us, it's always been about the land And what we really have been are grass farmers and forage farmers. That's the stepping stone of, or the cornerstone of our whole operation. So we've been more worried about forage genetics, honestly, than we have about cattle genetics.
Well, and I know as a beef and lamb producer myself, I mean, where Arlene's looking at measuring butter, fat, or yield, or, pounds in the tank or whatever, my biggest concerns are, is she stupid and is she crazy? Like
Yes.
those are harder to really put a number to, but those are kind of the top things we look for. And I mean, we have a much smaller herd than you do, so that's, one crazy bitch is a much larger percentage of our total. But, that's our first cut, is how big of a pain in the ass are they?
Well,
That's
it's so true, but also that is such a big variance from farm to farm too, right? So because we calve in May and June, and they calve out on pasture, and unless you're a first time heifer, we don't touch you. Like you're checked once a day, and we'll deal with any emergencies. But other than that, you're on your own, and you're miles away from the nearest yard. So we actually kind of love the crazy bitches because they're good coyote chasers and they protect their calf at all costs, which is extremely dangerous if you're calving in the yard and you have to go and put your hands on that calf as a human. But for ours that are range cattle, nope, be a crazy bitch. Just do it over there where I don't have to deal with you.
I'll even handle them being a crazy bitch if they've got a calf on, fine. But,
Right.
like we had an Angus cow that just destroyed a whole bunch of pipe gates. And I'm like, you know what? No, like you're just being a crazy bitch. Just, there's no excuse for this.
It's so
She
true.
went straight to the sale because it's just not worth it. Um,
Well, yeah, well, where we run into that is when we're handling them as yearlings after, because crazy bitch genetics are definitely passed down. So when we get into a group of really flighty yearlings that are impossible to handle, that's when we know we need to be tamping that down on the cow herd a little.
yeah. So are you from a farm background yourself?
I am from a farm, but not a cattle farm. I grew up on a pure grain farm. That the only livestock we had was some 4-H calves and some show horses. So it was, and I met my husband at university, and we came back to his family farm immediately after university. Weren't farming with his parents, but right side by side. And he always wanted to be a cattle farmer. They had a small feedlot, and he loved the cow calf side of it. And I was like, well, farming's farming, right? How different can it be? Turns out it's completely freaking different. And I had a real steep learning curve that I needed to figure out and do a lot of learning and a lot of adjusting my expectations of what farm life would look like. Because the flexibility of your time on a grain farm is 100% different than the daily grind of livestock, for sure.
Yeah, I suppose with crops, once they're planted, or I mean, obviously there's work to be done, but it's not as time sensitive generally as livestock work
Absolutely.
is. Yeah.
Absolutely. We got to spend time at the lake in the summer, and we got to go on vacations in the winter. And yeah, it's just a different level of daily expectations for sure. And then you throw in that we're a mixed farm. So you have all of the high stress times of planting and harvest and all of that as well. But then the months of putting up feed in the summer, and of course feeding cattle all winter long too. So we are lucky. We have 2 full-time hired guys, and they are fantastic. We could never do this without them. So they do offer us a little bit of flexibility, which has been mostly just eaten up by chasing kids to their activities for the past 10 years, as I know you guys can probably attest to. But yeah, definitely a big difference from the grain, and even just grain farming cash flow compared to livestock, and on all the parts of it, they're just very different businesses.
Yeah, that's true too. I guess with grain farming, the money kind of goes out at one time and it comes in at one time, where with livestock, it mostly seems to just go out all the time. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
maybe it
coming
comes
in.
in sometimes.
Yeah, I'm
But
still waiting for that, I think,
yeah.
which is why we're going to grain farm more.
So are you guys able to support your family on what you're making on the farm, or are you Canada's apparently a whole different place than the US, where you guys, I mean, there are obvious downsides, don't get me wrong. Um, but it seems a lot more common in Canada for families to actually be able to support themselves on farms. It's like a
Yeah,
crazy
so
thing to the Americans, but
yeah, oh wow. So yeah, I would say most, not maybe not most, but a good percentage of farms here in Saskatchewan are completely self-sufficient. Really, it's like anywhere. There's a broad variety of sizes of farms,
mhm.
but for us, we're really fortunate. Where we wanted to farm, right when we started farming, there was a lot of land available for purchase and quite economically. So we were really able to start right from the get go, buying up land and getting ourselves to a size that we were able to not work off farm at all. My husband, I mentioned my husband and I met at university. We both have degrees in agriculture. He farmed full time right from the get go. Even though our part of the farm was quite a bit smaller, he worked on his parents' farm as well, and worked with them. And I had a full time off farm job in agriculture and worked in corporate agriculture for, a good 10 years. And that allowed us to live totally off of my income and just let the farm grow, basically. And yeah, 10 years in, and our farm was growing exponentially. Thank goodness. Like I said, all that land was available, and we were able to buy a good chunk of it. And the kids, I always had this idea that when you have kids, it gets easier when they get to school, and I'd have so much more time and freedom and flexibility once my kids were in school. And then my kids were in school, and I realized, holy crap, this is completely different. It is a total new level of shit show. And I was needed at home more than ever. So I gradually, decreased the days that I was working. I was able to work some part time marketing jobs, and even that got to be too much, which was terrifying for me to go full time at home and on the farm. I'm a super social person. I like to be around people. So it was terrifying, the idea of staying home in the middle of literally nowhere. But it's the best thing I ever did. It was the scariest and the best. I'm so glad we've never regretted it ever since. The attention that I can pay to my kids and chase them around, and also just helping out on the farm too. I'm definitely would never consider myself the primary farmer here, but there's no doubt that we could not be at the size and scale that we're at if I wasn't able to be such a support system.
I know that Katie and I have talked about it before, but my guess is one of the biggest factors in us as Canadian farmers being able to work full time on the farm, and I'm able to do the same as you, Adrienne, spend some of my time as a stay at home parent and some of my time farming, but not having to pay for healthcare is such a huge factor in our ability to do that, because I look at, you know, I'm in a few different, chat groups of farm women or farm families, and the costs associated with trying to fund your own healthcare if you don't have an off-farm job in the States just seems mind-blowing to me, and I don't know how that works. I guess, like we just don't have that expense that we have to factor in.
I've thought about that too often. Same thing with friends in the States and stuff. And just the cash flow, the after tax cash flow of having to pay that insurance and stuff, that's pretty significant. I will say, down there, I guess they have the benefit of their tax level isn't nearly as high as ours. But some days on the farm, that doesn't matter so much because livestock keeps going the way it is, and we don't pay that much.
Yeah, if you have enough debt, then you don't pay
Yes,
that much in tax.
exactly.
I know my family is incredibly lucky to have the level of health care that is provided by my job, but I would guess that our out of pocket health costs to carry this kind of coverage, if I had to pay for it, would probably be 3,000 a month pretty easily.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is, a year's income pretty quick. And that's for 4 people. Like, that's,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's just
you know,
one aspect of your family's needs, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
not anything else.
yep. And so that does make a big difference. And so there's a lot of families that maybe have coverage, but it's only maybe enough to keep from losing the whole farm if something happens, but not something so bad that you hit the cap and then you still have to pay for it. And that's just kind of, there's a lot of families getting by on crossing fingers and, hoping that you actually die if something bad happens. So
Oh,
it's not a
oh.
great system. you know, it's,
Well, and it's just the unknown of it, right? Like, I'm a person who I like a solid plan, and the plan can always change, but I like a plan. So the idea of not having that fallback would be actually terrifying to me. And I honestly, so again, this all relates back to agriculture, but that's a really huge reason of also why we're downsizing the cows and upsizing the grain here is because government programming, there is very little downside to grain farming in Saskatchewan in today's day and age. There's all sorts of government-backed insurance, and you'd have to be in a real big bind to get into financial trouble as a grain farmer. But those same backstops aren't there on the livestock side, especially beef that is not supply managed, like some other livestock based things up here. So my aversion to risk and my need for a plan, it does not bode well with the ups and downs of the livestock industry in Canada these days.
well, and you guys can make way cooler drone videos up there than we can, which I feel like is a real upside. As someone with an almost 5-year-old son and a 44-year-old husband who spend a lot of time watching YouTube videos of other farms. Here, like if I made a drone video of us harvesting, it would be like a 6-row head stopping and turning around and stopping and turning around. Where up there, you guys can get 7 combines side by side and miles, or kilometers, I guess, kilometers long fields, which looks really cool. Where here, it would just be my husband swearing and stuff breaking. Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. Where our land basin is, it's very rolly, lots of wetlands, lots of bush. So therefore, lots of turning and lots of
I didn't even
swearing.
know there were hills in Saskatchewan, I guess.
Yes. Well,
I guess I just figured it was.
no, we are not flat at all. And in fact, that's why we have been a livestock farm for so long. Is because who wants to farm frickin' hills in Saskatchewan? So yeah. But another interesting point is out east they might measure farmland by kilometers, but out west we measure it all in miles. And it's because the way our land was surveyed, every single field is a square, 160 acres, and is measured in miles, not kilometers. So I am 9 miles. I live 9 miles from our closest town called Ituna. But yet I live 120 kilometers from our closest city, which is Regina, because as soon as you go over the 20-mile line, then you just think in kilometers. It's very confusing.
That's so weird. I'm from central Iowa, which is very much grain farming, and it's measured by sections, like it sounds like it is up in your
Yep.
place, where it's, if you turn left, 3 times, you're at home.
Yes.
And I moved to a part of Iowa where if you turn left 3 times, you're in Wisconsin. You know, like I get lost all the time up here still because it's just, at home, if you turn left enough times, you're going to be right where you started.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Thumbs down on this weird ass situation.
Yeah.
But there's hills up here, which I guess does change things.
Yeah, that's true. So, Adrienne, I know that you and your husband were part of the Canadian Outstanding Young Farmer program, and my husband and I were too at one point through the Ontario program. We didn't get to go national, so we didn't get quite as far as you guys did. But can you tell us a bit more about that competition and why people should apply?
Yes, if you are 40 or under, I highly, 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 highly recommend. Um, it's something that when we were first nominated, that my husband and I really struggled with. And when I say my husband and I just mean my husband because does not like to go and do all the things and see all the people and really leave the farm for anything. And
Make a
I want to do
presentation.
all of those things. Yeah, yes. So we went back and forth for a little bit of whether or not we should be going through with this. And I'm so glad we did. It's the best thing we've ever done. Um, so, Outstanding Young Farmers, they have different regions across Canada. It mostly goes by province, except all the Atlantic provinces are together and the territories join in with a province. But so every region or every province basically uh, has one farm that they send on to the nationals. And through that program, we have made lifelong friends that I would never have crossed paths with in my life. I love that it is people who are doing unique things on their farms, whether it is finding interesting ways of using other people's money, or whether it is doing niche markets, or whether it's just like they're doing the status quo, but they're absolutely rocking it and thinking big and taking risks. I think that any time that you can surround yourself with other people who are doing really cool shit, it is going to make you better at whatever you're doing, even if it's totally unrelated to what that other farm is doing. I think it's really easy for us as farmers to get sucked into what we are just doing every single day and kind of get bogged down in our own operations. But even my introvert husband, who doesn't like to be around all the people, every time that he goes to an Outstanding Young Farmer event, he comes back just excited and wanting to look for new opportunities and to think about things a little bit differently. That is something that as farmers we just don't do enough of. And whether it's through this program or maybe peer groups or whatever is out there, maybe it's just hitting your major egg trade show or whatever. I think we all can be better at that, learning from each other and inspiring each other.
Yeah, it's so easy to get kind of stuck in your physical place, right? And thinking, well, this is the only way to do it, and this is the way it's always been done, and we'll keep doing it because it's safe, or any of those types of things. I saw a quote the other day that was like, tradition is just peer pressure from your ancestors. And it was like,
Yes.
I thought that was really good for agriculture too, where it's like, okay, maybe this is the way that your predecessor did it, or, 3, 4 generations before. But would they want you to keep doing it just because they did? Maybe they didn't have any options. Maybe they didn't want to do it that way. And we have to be willing, yeah, to try new things and take risks and learn from other people too.
Absolutely. Yep. Couldn't agree more.
I think, too, one of the huge benefits I see from attending conferences and stuff is getting to talk to farmers who've been doing it for 50 years and still have stuff go wrong. Because I think so many farmers get so stuck in everyone else is doing amazingly and our farm is going to shit and nobody else's cows ever escape and nobody else's fields ever flood and everything is great for everybody else. And it's bullshit, but it's not like, generally we're going to call each other up and just be like, hey, did you know that my whole field flooded and all my cows ran away? And Like, we're not going to talk about the things that go wrong. And so it gets really easy to think that it's just your farm that is struggling. And it's not healthy to think it's just you.
It's so true. Or even even on good years, on any given day, there is so much shit that goes sideways. And I think that we have this idea as farmers that oh, we actually got rain this year. We're not in a drought. It's not horrible. We didn't get hailed out. Every animal on the farm didn't die. So I just need to suck it up because really things aren't that bad. When the reality is, on a really good day, a lot of bad shit happens that is stressful, and you need to figure it out and work through it. And the more that we actually talk about that, yeah, there's solidarity in that, and that we aren't alone, and that I had a shitty day, but so did so many other people, and we can all commiserate together. The downside of social media for sure is so much is just the highlight reel, and agriculture social media is no different. It's a lot of beautiful drone pictures, but it's also important we share sometimes the shit show as well.
And I think that's such a good point too, because I know, as grain farmers, we see that Instagram post of somebody's yield in the combine, that they hit 300 bushels an acre. And I'm like, but it was for 20 feet. Like, yeah, you hit 300, but it wasn't the whole damn farm. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are on how we can improve how honest we are on social media and how we can deal with our frustrations about it. Because I know too, it's hard because you don't want to look like a loser. Like, nobody wants to come out and just be like, everything is terrible, But also, it's good not to totally bullshit people.
Right. Well, and there's toxic negativity, but then there's also toxic positivity too, right? And it's a fine line of not wanting to go too far in either direction. And then there's also the thing you need to worry about of activists, and sharing a bad day on a livestock farm can easily sometimes be taken way out of context and used for, some of that activist driven narrative that unfortunately is still out there. But I think the core of it needs to come from that we as farmers, just like all people, we need to be able to poke a little fun at ourselves sometimes. And some of the shit shows that happen, I would actually say the majority of the shit shows that happen are our own doing. And so we need to be able to be like, look at my stupidity. I just got ridiculously stuck because I was driving the tractor while watching a TikTok and drove right into a slough, and just own it and be able to laugh at it and be a bit ridiculous, right? Because we all are, and that's normal and that's okay. Yeah, I think that when we can allow ourselves to be seen as human, then it is just not only good for our own souls, but good for everyone else's as well. And, cause my kids are teenagers now, right? So they are quite a bit more picky now about what images of them I would put on social media than when they were 5 and 6 and just adorable, even when they were bad, right? So it's something that we talk about a lot, that it's okay to poke fun at yourself, and it's okay to poke fun at each other a little bit, but still being mindful, if before I share things about them, I ask for their permission now, which I feel like I shouldn't have to do because I freaking own them because I made them. But also it's a life lesson of I don't own their image to put on social media, and just they need to be aware of that when they have a funny video of some stupid thing their friend did or whatever,
or that
right?
we did.
Yes, exactly.
We don't want that to happen. So you do have to start asking for permission. Otherwise, the next time I do something stupid, it could end up on social media.
Exactly. So, and my farmer's just coming in to interrupt this.
Hi, farmer.
I'm doing a podcast.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just glad to hear somebody else tell the truth about having to ask your kids for consent, because it is so fucking annoying to have to like model asking for physical affection from someone that you literally lived inside your body for most of a year.
Right?
Like, you didn't ask permission before you just jumped all around in there. Like, why should I, but that's not how consent works, is,
I
you
know.
have to ask unless you don't want to, and then you don't, God, it's annoying.
It
Now
is.
I'm mad just thinking about it.
Right? And like, especially when you
Ugh.
throw in the whole feeling of ownership that you have over your kids, right? Like, I own your ass. I can do whatever I want, except shit, no, that's bad. So I guess I'll ask permission.
Yeah, it's such a strange, like through that transition period too, right? From like little kids to teens, there are those years in between where one day they're still a little and they act it, right? And then you turn around and you're like, when did we start to be able to have these conversations? And now I realize, yeah, how big you're getting. But yeah, day to day and even minute to minute, sometimes that completely changes.
Absolutely. They keep us on our toes. That is the one thing. Parenting and farming are exactly the same because no 2 days are the same. And just as soon as you think you got all your shit figured out, then everything changes.
So you said you have teenagers, and I'm just gonna go there because I am not shallow. Why does your skin look so good? Were you 12 when you had these kids, or are you like, is this a filter? You guys, like, listeners, just go look at Adrienne's social media. You will understand why I'm just asking this creepy ass question,
I love
because
it.
she looks amazing, and I generally look like I got backed over by a garbage truck. Like, so, Adrienne, explain your skincare routine to us, because I also, like, in all seriousness, as someone who's had skin cancer and, like, is dealing with all this, like, weird skin shit, working outside, especially in the wind, in the sun, whatever, is fucking bad for your skin. So tell us, please, because you look like someone who might know something about how to not look like shit.
I don't know
Thank
if
you.
I know anything. I do. I know a couple things that if I am not wearing any makeup, there are times on social media that I'm using a filter. So like what you see is not always reality. But like you're looking at my face right now, but I have a light ring on. So sometimes, you know, light is a girl's the right light is a girl's best friend. But also I would say I had a bit of an epiphany in the middle of COVID, to be honest, when everything was shut down and I was home all the time. And apparently, when you're home more, you look in the mirror more. I don't know. But I was like, I need to make some real changes because I'm sick of feeling like I look like shit. And I think we're all the hardest on ourselves, right? Um, but I started religiously using sunscreen, which I've never been a sunscreen person. I'm kind of that in between skin tone where I don't burn super easily, but also I don't get real dark either. So I've just never really worried about it. But I should, because, like, if I wasn't wearing any makeup right now, you would see sunspots all over my face. Um, and started, like, actually trying to take care of it. So I'm not the greatest about doing a great job of cleaning my skin, but I'm pretty religious about moisturizing it now. And uh I know nothing about anything except that all of a sudden now I have this whole budget line about skincare items that 5 years ago was probably just spent on wine. So Um, I don't know if I'm doing anything right or not, but apparently what I am doing right is good use of filters and lights because, yeah, sometimes what you see on social media is not the whole picture.
I will say that having skincare, especially sunscreen, in your budget is a hell of a lot less expensive than going to the dermatologist to have things removed. And that if I had realized earlier that generally the way skin cancer is treated is to cut it out and to just keep going until it's gone, I would have started being a lot better about sunblock a lot sooner, because
That's a really,
Yeah.
really great point.
It's
And as I'm sitting here, I'm like, I never have talked to my kids, especially my daughter, about sunscreen. And like, they're farm kids, they are outside every day all year round doing chores, and they're just outdoorsy kids too. um yeah, I should be having them wear sunscreen on their face. Like, I feel like in Canada we grew up, we're pretty good about like sunscreen on our shoulders, or our chest, or places that you would typically get a sunburn. But you don't think about the daily, especially like for us as farmers, your face sees so much sunlight all the time.
So one of the other reasons I enjoy following you on social media is looking at what you're making for supper, because I'm always in like a food slump, and you're also honest about like what you're taking on the road, because you're busy, and like sometimes it has to be on the go. So can you give me some ideas for what I should make for supper?
Yeah, we live our lives around car meals these days with two very athletic kids. We're always on the road to somewhere, and because we live in the middle of nowhere, it's a long ways. Both of my kids drive an hour each way for just practices, so it's a lot of car meals around here. Um, but my system of figuring out what the F we're gonna have for supper that night is to mid-morning go downstairs, open my deep freeze, and stare mindlessly at it until a protein jumps out at me that says, cook me today. And then I build my meal around that, which sometimes works awesome, and then sometimes are hilarious fails because I have nothing to actually that goes well with that said protein. But I feel like some of the best meals are the low and slow meals. If you're around the house or the yard enough to make that happen, love throwing a roast in the oven, and just letting it do its thing all day long, whether it's a roast chicken, roast pork, or roast beef. Um, I know that in my freezer, the last things to get cooked every year are the things that take attention throughout the day. I've got about 4 briskets in my freezer right now that are just waiting for a day that has time for me to be smoking them and spritzing them, and giving them all the love and attention. Um, Beef short ribs are all the next last thing to get cooked, because that braising kind of takes all day. They're the most delicious things, but usually the last things to go. And
Instant Pot.
yes,
Short ribs in the Instant Pot.
yes,
Perfection.
that's I need to get better at using my Instapot. It lives downstairs in my basement, and anything that lives downstairs feels like it's a pain in the ass to cart it up and actually use it. Same with my air fryer. I probably only use that once every couple months for the same reason. Um, so yeah, but those my go-tos typically are things that I can cook with ground beef because it's quick and it's easy. Um, Spaghetti and meat sauce we eat on average twice a week because it is so easy. Kids love it. You can eat it in the car on the go if you have to. Leftovers are perfect too. Love that one. That's definitely a go-to. And honestly, homemade pizza. I always have stuff in my freezer that I can throw pizza together. Again, living in the middle of nowhere, there are no pizza delivery options where we live, and it's a half-hour round trip just to go and get pizza. So I just make our own. I've got pre-made shells in the freezer and some deli meat, and what else do you need?
Those are some good ideas. I already did take some beef out of the freezer today, so it's a head start. Now I just need to actually do something with it.
There you That is the thing. Someday I will be the person that takes the meat out the day before. Someday, when I grow up, that will be me. But it's no time soon. It still has not
Then
happened.
you might change your mind between yesterday and today about what you want to eat, right?
That's exactly it. And I am a very, I don't know what the right word is, emotional cook. Like, I get excited about cooking because I feel like eating that thing that day. So how can you decide that the day before? You're going to want something different.
Or if, God forbid, it's the day that your husband offers to take the whole family to Culver's for dinner, which you Canadians are missing
I've
out,
never been.
okay? I'm just saying, there's cheese or butter or cheese and butter on basically everything they
Ooh.
make. It's fast food, but like, it's actually food. You know, we're at McDonald's and you're like, I feel so much worse after eating
Yes.
that. Culver's is like the inverse of that. And they're based in Wisconsin, which totally makes them locally owned and thusly
Yeah, you can feel good
okay.
about it all around.
So,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So one of the reasons we started this podcast was because of the isolation of being first-time parents. And like you said, I mean, it's a half-hour round trip to get pizza here if you want pizza from the gas station, you know. And so a lot of the parenting groups we were in, there was a lot of, you know, just get it door dashed or, you know, take an Uber or get a nanny or whatever, like things that will not happen. So what was the transition to motherhood like for you?
Honestly, motherhood was not isolating for me. Here in Canada, we are blessed with a 1 year maternity leave, where you get 50% of your wage for a whole year. Those maternity year leaves were isolating for sure. Like baby years were hard, but in general, when my kids were hard, I was going back to work. After that year was over, work provided me with a lot of social interactions. Um, it was a far greater adjustment for me when I stayed home full time on the farm than when I had my babies, for sure. But that happens to coincide exactly with when I started my blog and started being a lot more active on social media. So that again is the upside of social media. It's this whole new world of of friendships and like-minded people and support system that otherwise I would never be able to find in my tiny little town, that is still half an hour away or 15 minutes away, right? Like, so that has been the upside for me and how I managed through that part of it. Um, I really did not enjoy my mat leave years. Um, and I think probably looking back now, the isolation of those two specific years were probably a big part of why I didn't enjoy them as much. I mean, I love my babies, don't get me wrong, but they were hard on me specifically. And I'm old enough that social media wasn't a part of my maternity years, 17 years ago. Well, I don't even know if Instagram was alive yet, right? So I think that's where I would definitely tell other new moms to look for. And like you said, not to look for like-minded people in similar situations. It's reaching out to you two and figuring out where your online social connections are, or listening to podcasts like this and understanding that, just like we talked about, understanding that everybody has shit days on the farm, everybody has shit days as a mom, as a parent, as a caregiver, right? Like, children are the most rewarding thing in the world, and they are also the thing that drives us absolutely fucking bananas. Whether they are 2 months or 17 years old, like, holy, their emotional investment in their well-being, and also your sense of responsibility when things go wrong, because things are gonna go wrong whether they're 6 months old or 16. Like, it just happens. So understanding that you're not alone in those things, I think, is huge. But it's on us as remote rural parents to sort that out and to not just bury ourselves and isolate ourselves
Yeah, I
even
know
more.
that I was going from working to my first maternity leave around the same time as you. I have a 17-year-old as well. And I think Facebook was maybe just starting, but like we were on dial up still. So you had to like
Yeah.
log on and go in. But
Yes.
it was such a culture shock to go from I was commuting into the city and coming back to the farm at night, or I was working shift work. So some of the time I was coming back in the middle of the night. So I was around, but I didn't really know anyone in my community. I wasn't from here. And so then I was off on my first year of maternity leave and realizing I don't know anyone. Like I know my mother-in-law and a couple of my immediate neighbors, but I don't know any other parents of young kids. Like I have no mom friends. And so it took a long time and work to actually meet other people. And not everyone has resources. Like we're not too far from a town where there were playgroups and there was a library and that kind of stuff, and so I could meet other parents of young kids, but I know not everyone is close enough to those things. And we have the Canadian privilege of having a year off where other people are, and depending on your farm situation too, you may be going back to work within days of having your baby too. So those things are all different depending on where you live and what your personal situation.
Yeah, it's definitely a journey. And I think that looking back now, if I would have realized what a journey it is, and it's not just like I need to find a best friend tomorrow kind of thing. It's my life is going to change and progress, and friendships are going to ebb and flow. And honestly, the easiest time of a parent's life, I think, or in my experience, to make that network is once your kids start to be in stuff, right? So you all of a sudden your social life becomes the other parents that are on your kids' hockey team, um, or their volleyball team, or 4-H club, or whatever it is that your kids are passionate about. That's where we spend all of our time. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that there's some parents within that team or group that aren't total duds and you can actually form great relationships with.
Yeah. Even if it's just for the hour that they're at practice, or in the 4-H meeting or whatever, to have someone else to hang out with for a little while. So what do you enjoy most about raising your kids out where you are, out on the land, and being farm kids, being ranch?
I think it's really cool, and it's honestly such a privilege as farmers that we get to share our profession so much with our kids. If you compare it to a doctor or an accountant or so many other professions, that their professional life is completely separate from their home and family life, whereas our kids are everyday parts of our farm. We've been very, very conscious about involving our kids since the time that they were old enough to cart a 5-gallon pail across the yard to feed calves or whatever. There's been a lot of times where that's been a struggle because it would be far easier to either do it ourselves or to have one of the hired guys do it. But we've always really, really wanted and made it a priority for our kids to be involved. And now I'm so happy that we went through that struggle and we tried so hard to do that, because both of my kids, they're better equipment operators than I am. They're better at handling cattle than I am. Um, so that's really great to see. And they are still young enough that I don't know for sure if either of them will want to farm full time after, into their adulthood, but they're definitely prepared to. They have all the skills needed. So I think that is definitely the coolest part about farming with family. And, you know, it's it's not only a little bit easier probably for farmers to involve their kids like that, but it's also just a cultural thing in agriculture that we do want to see our kids involved in. That it's when you look around at other neighboring farms too, there's a lot of kids that are involved. And that's, when I think about my marketing off farm job, sure, when I maybe have some discussions about that over the supper table, yeah, for sure, but it's not the same as being immersed in it.
And it's harder to explain to your kids, if you were, a doctor and you were operating on someone, and be like, okay, and so then I got the scalpel, versus like, let's go to the barn, there's a cow calving, or like we have to go to the field and go do this thing. and to be able to have them there and experience it.
Yes.
And whether or not they understand it when they're little or not doesn't matter. It's the fact that they've seen it, and then they can ask questions, or then they'll do it again the next season, or
Yeah.
see it again.
And I also think it's important for them to see the shit show that happens on farms, and the problem solving and how you navigate through all of the bad things. Because I think in today's day and age, a lot of kids don't see firsthand the adversity that their parents have to go through. Whereas right there, literally in front of our kids' faces. And hopefully that's something that whatever their future holds for them, they will be better at navigating through adversity and figuring the shit out as it happens, because they've seen us do it so much. And now they're at the point where they're doing it too. My son was out swathing this past fall, and he knocked a bunch of blades off, and he was out in the middle of nowhere, so he had to fix it himself. Perfect. That is great. You had to figure it out. And that will bode well for him, even if he becomes a surgeon. Something goes wrong in the surgery. It's an automatic, well, what do I do to figure
and
this
for
out?
better or for worse, sorry, I was just going to say, and for better or worse, seeing how we respond to that adversity too, where, sometimes it might not always be pretty, but, if we're trying to model, okay, this happened and we're going to figure it out ourselves, or we're going to ask for help, or we're going to take a minute and collect our thoughts and then start again, like how we respond to the things that are frustrating to us is hopefully we can give that as examples for how to proceed when things don't go the way you want.
I think, too, that's such a good point about our kids knowing what we do, because so many of us I work from home but remotely, and I found out the other day that my 6-year-old thinks I'm a ninja. So them having a real understanding of what we actually do, and watching them, my kids are younger, but watching them apply what they're learning in useful ways. I mean, knowing math is a good thing. Being able to count actual eggs while we're making dinner or while we're getting them from the chicken coop is practical and makes sense to them, and being able to actually be helpful. I mean, little kids are basically the least helpful creatures on earth, but they really want to help, and it's so nice to have so many more opportunities to let them help with things that if they make a mess, it doesn't matter as much as if they're making a mess in the house, and I know for us, at least, the teaching respect for living things. Arlene, I did talk the girl child out of the live hamster because I pointed out that it was probably going to get eaten. But just you can't hit the dog just because you're mad, because the dog is a living thing with feelings. We have to feed cattle even if you don't want to, because they are living things. And I think that's such a good extension of we respect other people because they're living things, to spread that to a wider basis. So tell us about all the horrible things that your kids have done and what your biggest struggles have been. Because your kids are old enough to have really done some shit. My kids are still at the they drew on the wall phase, which is irritating, but not actively dangerous.
Yeah, my son went through that phase too, and I distinctly still remember posting about that and being like, spankings will never go out of style in my house, as long as drawing in the walls never goes out of style in my kid's life. Which, yeah, kids. And also he comes by it naturally, because my husband, when he was my kid's age at that time, he not only spray painted the side of their machinery Quonset, he spray painted his name. Like, who did he think was going to get blamed for that? Honestly. So, genetics, again, are such a thing, and sometimes you need to be more careful about the bully you choose. But my kids are pretty good. I mean, probably every mom says that. They drive me absolutely bonkers. What I think is the most amazing to me is how different the two of them are. The girl and the boy. And I don't know if it's just straight up different personalities or if it's that a girl is genetically that much different than a boy. But, my girl definitely went through the hormone phase and the mood swings and figuring all that part out. But she's always been pretty easy. She's very chill. She has not required a huge amount of parenting. And the boy is like bounce off the walls active, holes in walls, um, all sorts of stupid shit that just requires constant parenting. And they both have wonderful intentions, but I think that has been the hardest thing, is to adjust the parenting to the kid, because they just require completely different things from me. um yeah, I yell at my son a lot, like probably more than is healthy. And yet if I raise my voice to my daughter at all, it is like instant regret, because it just affects her
Yeah,
completely
you
differently.
just broke her heart.
So I think that is the biggest thing. Yes, exactly. And usually the trouble that they get into is pretty unintentional. Like there's been some well, my daughter broke the baler a couple years ago from not paying attention. My son, when he was 4, tried to drive the quad through the garage door, and just dumb things that luckily nobody was injured doing. Uh, but so far, like, knock on wood, because I feel like I'm tempting karma here, that they're kind of, the police are going to show up at my door tomorrow or something, because, never say never about your kids doing bad things. I think I'm thankful that my kids are growing up now and not even 10 years ago. I really feel for teenagers that had to figure out social media before we as adults had it figured out, even, right? Like the idea that things live forever online, and the stupid things that teenagers 10, 15 years ago would put on social media compared to now. Now you have to be really dumb to do some of those things, whereas you know that gap generation between me and my kids didn't didn't have it all figured out yet. So but I'm even more thankful that I grew up in a time that there wasn't cameras in phones, and so none of my dumb shit lives
Same.
anywhere,
Yes.
literally
Yeah.
anywhere.
Same. Same. Same.
That's such a thing we don't give kids credit for now, too, is, people say, well, these dumb teenagers with their posting naked photos online. And I'm like, the only reason we didn't was because we couldn't, because it wasn't a thing. Like,
Right?
maybe you'd take a Polaroid and give it to somebody. Like, what, you're not going to go get those photos developed? Like, if you were going to show your boobs to somebody, you had to, like, walk up and show your boobs to them. And, like,
Yes.
only one person saw it. Where now, like, there's not a time gap or any, like, effort gap that makes them think about what they're doing.
Right.
And adults aren't good at thinking about what we're doing when we do it. So there's no way in hell teenagers should be. And it's not fair to blame them for doing stupid shit when they've got ways to do stupid shit that we never even dreamed
It's so
of.
true.
And
Yeah.
anyway,
So far my kids are
they probably still shouldn't be showing their boobs on the internet, but
so far my kids are smarter than I was at that age. So really, what more could I ask for? They're still gonna do dumb shit. Hopefully it just continues to be less dumb shit than I did.
I just hope my kids do new dumb shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Invent some new things.
So one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on, yeah, was
Have an
to talk
adventure.
about teens, which we're doing. But what do you love about the ages that they're at right now versus when they were little guys? What do you love about having teenagers in your house? Because it seems like we only ever talk about the bad stuff.
Right. I think, honestly, this is my favorite stage of parenting. Hands down, easily. I love this stage. And I think it's because my kids have found the things that they're passionate about. And when they're little and you're carting them to like hockey practice and swim lessons and band and piano and like all of the things, because they still just don't know what they like or what they don't. Whereas now, like, my son is so passionate about hockey. He is on the ice almost every day of the week, and he is working out at the gym and worried about nutrition and sleep habits and all these things. Like, he lives it completely, eats, breathes, sleeps it. And it's just really cool to watch that progression. My daughter's really into horses. She shows reining horses, and the work and dedication that requires. I think it's just so cool that I not only get to be along for the ride, like, who am I kidding? I am the ride, because I'm still chauffeuring them around everywhere, but I just get to watch them not only choose their things, but really get good at it and want to work hard at it. That just is so exciting to me, and means that I'm so excited to see that work ethic in them as adults, and that they're learning now how much of a difference that their hard work on stuff, like, for example, with my son, how hard he works off the ice directly relates to how his success on the ice, and that he can clearly see that and is learning that, and watching him learn that, I just think it's so fun. I just love it. All the other hard parts about teenagers balancing their passions with their schoolwork and with their social lives, and trying to sort all that out, especially in a small town where your circle is very small. Sometimes, I don't know what it's like down in the States, or even out east, but sometimes small town Saskatchewan means that there are certain people in your town that don't like to see other people succeed, which really sucks. But also at the same time, choosing to step above that and pushing yourself and seeking out greater opportunities than what can be found right here at home. That's a big thing for my kids. And also a big reason why there will be no option for them to stay home as soon as they're done high school. You are always welcome to come back, but you have to go away for a while, wherever that is, whether that's to university or learning a trade or working somewhere else or traveling the world. Like, don't care what you want to go do, great, but you can come back later, but you have to go.
Yeah, there's something about, kind of being in a small town. So it teaches us that we have to learn to get along with people, because, if you're on a farm, you're not going anywhere. So, but yeah, we also want to give our kids those opportunities to spread their wings a bit and see that there is a world out there. And then if they choose to come back afterwards, then that's great. And if they find something else that they're passionate about, then that's amazing too, right?
I know I have to say that I appreciate that my kids are still little enough that, like, I do look forward to the day that they can shower by themselves and, like, zip their own coats and that aspect of parenting. But it is nice right now that when my daughter comes home complaining about school, it's that somebody accidentally tripped her during gym class. And it's not, so-and-so said they don't want to be by date for prom or whatever. Like, they're big problems to little people, but they're not big problems to big people, where it seems like teenagers have the capability to get into a lot more trouble than little ones do. My kids don't go anywhere that I don't take them. They don't buy anything that I don't buy for them. Like, there's no, they're pretty limited in what they can get up to, especially living this far from town. But yeah, it's
definitely the bonus of living in small towns or by small towns is that everybody knows everything. So when my kid's being a shithead, I'm going to hear about it within 24 hours, guaranteed, which is really a good thing. I can't imagine the difficulties of raising kids in large urban centers where you literally don't know any of your neighbors, or have a different connection point even with the school. It would be, I as someone who has only lived in urban centers to go to university, I can't even imagine navigating that. That would be completely out of my realm of experience.
Yeah, it is. My kids are in a small community daycare in a small public school, and it is really nice to know the other kids' parents. And, I hear about shit my kids have gotten up to before they get home from daycare, and it's nice to be able to ask about other kids' families and other kids' parents and, sort of vet people that way. And it is, as stifling as small towns can be, it is nice to have that overview on people. So we ask all of our guests, if you were going to dominate a category at a county fair, what would it be? And categories can be real or made up.
Well, I grew up traveling the county equivalent of county fairs here in Saskatchewan, showing horses. So I have a lot of experience. My whole summers would be spent at fairs. And so I will say the number one most important thing about fair life is to understand that to never ever make eye contact with a carny. Because then you're getting sucked in for something. And especially if you're a teenage girl, then really don't make eye contact with a carny. But I would rock the horse show aspect of it. You throw me on a horse and I can make you go do some fun stuff. But as for, normal county fair stuff now, I would be the queen at doing food reviews of all of the food booths. That is what I would want to do now. And the weirder the food, the more fun it would be. I think I can definitely see myself going down that path and just like traveling to every fair and doing reviews on the corn dogs and the elephant ears and the up here poutine, very important, and figuring out what all the best food spots are.
That is a good one. I was thinking you were going to say like judging like the pies and stuff that people enter, but I like your version too, that it's both a service that you're offering the community and something that you would enjoy as well. So we'll go ahead and move into our cussing and discussing segment. We've registered for an online platform so listeners can leave their cussing and discussing entries for us and we will play them on the show. So go to speakpipe.com/barnyardlanguage and leave us a voice memo, or you can always send us an email at barnyardlanguage@gmail.com or check the show notes and the links should be there. So Katie, what have you got to cuss and discuss this week?
I hope that people take this in the not intended to be offensive manner in which it may or may not come out. I really wish that there was some sort of remedial girliness classes for those of us who were not raised by girly people, because like I'm looking at Adrienne and I'm like, what? I bet her kid shows up to county fair with like her hair braided right and her horse's hair braided right and like
she's shaking her head no. You can't see it, people, but Adrienne says that's not a thing.
My daughter keeps asking to grow her hair out and I'm like, honey, I can't be in charge of this. I keep my hair short because I can't deal with it. And by short, I do not mean when people say, oh, I have short hair because it's only to my shoulders. I mean, no, mine is like 2 inches. And so I just feel a little bad that I'm not good at the girly girl stuff that my girly girl daughter wants to do. And part of me was, I was raised by a strong hippie feminist, and part of me is like, well, to hell with the status quo of girly girlness. But also my kid really likes it, and it's not hurting anything. But I'm not good at it, and it makes me grumpy.
Oh,
I still can't do a French braid.
Me neither. I cannot. I can braid a horse's tail because it's big and right there, and that's about it. Like, I it has taken me a very, very long time to figure out how to actually like properly apply mascara, let alone all the contouring and stuff that people do now that I don't even actually know what that means, let alone be able to do it myself. So, and that's why
No,
my
there's
hair is
too many
long, is
brushes
because
and
yes,
sponges.
the only thing that I can do is a ponytail, and I don't do that pretty. I do that like functional. So,
I end up getting mine caught in car doors when it's longer. So it seemed like no, legitimately, it has happened multiple times. It seems like a safety thing at this point to not.
That must be very long
Like,
hair. It's one
no,
extreme or the other with you, okay?
I have a lot of it. Yeah, it
well, if
doesn't
there's
take
those
much.
remedial classes, sign
Anyway,
me up too. I'll join you over Zoom to do them because I got a lot of learning to do in that area too, which also did not help my daughter at all. She luckily was not very into that stuff, but now that she is a teenager and she would like to occasionally, apply some makeup or do her hair, and I'm like, I don't know. Here's the one thing that I can do. So, you know,
That's what
right?
YouTube's for. There's millions of makeup tutorials. I'm not going to watch them, but if my daughter wants to figure it out, then yeah.
I will say
That's the good side of social media.
I am really proud though that the little boy last night after his bath asked if we could do nail polish so he could be extra
Aw.
pretty. I was like, well, baby, we can do it tomorrow right after school so it'll be dry, but absolutely. And then he wants like green and blue so it can be like John Deere and New Holland, because we're that family. But
Yeah.
that's
The
fine.
farm nail polish.
Yeah.
Perfect. Have you got any orange?
I was just thinking about the repercussions of a makeup line for farm kids. Anyway, Adrienne, what do you have to cuss and discuss?
Oh, so what has been annoying me lately has been personal space. So perhaps it's because I live in the middle of nowhere, but so I frequently have to head into the city to hit up Costco, which I think maybe is called Sam's Club down in the States, or is there Costco down there too? Um,
That's two separate
okay.
businesses. Costco is my
Yeah,
happy
well,
place,
it
though,
can
so
be
I
mine too
gotcha.
because I love what they sell and I love buying in bulk and all of that. But people's lack of personal space in today's day and age, I just can't handle it. And like there's we're in a giant warehouse. There's no need to like press yourself up against me or your cart or whatever. Like my personal space bubble maybe is quite large, but I just every time I go to the city now, I just am like cringing constantly at the people that are like right up in your grill. And for what? Just take a step back.
And you'd think we would have been getting better at this, right? Like,
Yeah,
use this, like, so let's stick with the 6 to 8 feet or whatever the rules were before
right.
when we had to stay away from each other. I'm okay with keeping that rule forever.
Ditto.
We can, a full
Yeah.
cart length is good.
I will admit that when people do shit like getting in line behind you and then they just get closer and closer, like that's magically
Yeah.
going to make things faster, I will unload my cart so slowly because I refuse to reward that behavior by actually
Yeah.
hurrying. Ugh. Arlene, what do you have to cuss and discuss today?
So I didn't actually have anything written down, and I figured I would get inspired as we were talking. And so one thing that I've been thinking about is as our kids get older, they get more independent, which is fantastic. But I would still like a little bit of communication from the school once in a while. And it feels like it's completely dropped off. And that could be that everything's perfectly fine and there's no issues. Or it could be that my kid is messing up and I'm not going to find out until I get a report card. Or they've been suspended or something. Like, I really have no idea because, and I don't want to be super gendered about it, but my boys give me so little detail about what goes on in their daily life that I really have no concept of how things are going. So sometimes I will even go so far as like to contact like the friends' parents and be like, so how are things at school for my kid? Maybe your daughter has told me because I know that they're friends with each other. So yeah, I don't need like the daily progress reports like we used to get when they were in elementary school, but I don't know, maybe an email once every couple of weeks would be nice. But I know that teachers are overworked, so I shouldn't ask for too much, but like just a few hints. Ah, kids. All right. Thank you so much, Adrienne, for joining us today on the podcast. If people want to follow you online or get in touch, where should they find you?
So on Instagram and Facebook, it's View from the Ranch Porch. You can search me up there. Twitter's under my own name, Adrienne Ivey. The blog that I haven't wrote anything on in 2 years, but you could always search it up. It's viewfromtheranchporch.com.
Yeah.
I don't know why you would want to, but Instagram definitely is where I spend most of my time. It's where I met you lovely ladies, and definitely where my happy place is. So that's where I hope to meet some of the people listening so that I can follow back.
Thank you so much. It was great to talk to you.
I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks for
This was
coming
a
on,
blast.
Adrienne. Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy this show, we encourage you to support us by becoming a patron. Go to www.patreon.com/barnyardlanguage to make a small monthly donation to help cover the costs of making the show.
Please rate and review the podcast and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as Barnyard Language, and on Twitter we are Barnyard Pod. If you want to connect with other farming families, you can join our private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, please get in touch. We are a proud member of the Positively Farming Media Podcast Network.